Hi, my name is Justin from bedheadguitarist.com. Welcome to another guitar book review. Now, in these series of videos, I will be reviewing books and giving you my honest opinion on whether you should buy the book or not, and I'll give you a rating at the end of this video. I'll talk about the merits and the bad points of the book, so stay tuned for the video. So the book we'll be reviewing today is called Music Reading for Guitar: The Complete Method, and this is published by Musicians Institute, written by David Oakes. So Musicians Institute was the school that I graduated from when I went to study guitar performance. And written by David Oakes, he was an instructor at Musicians Institute. He wasn't there when I went over to LA. And he has written a few books on classical and fingerstyle guitar techniques, as well as a jazz counterpoint method called two-line improvisation, which he co-authored. So you should definitely check those books out. So let's talk a bit about the physical aspects of the book. I think that's very important because sometimes that's what draws you into buying a book. To me, I think a nice looking cover always is a selling point for me. And just as it's a quite a regular size guitar book if you're familiar with the size of guitar books. It's slightly bigger than an A4 size, and it comes in at about 163 to 165 pages, which includes the advertisements at the back of the book. And it's quite a big book, so it's something that you could put on your music stand if you have an orchestral, those big size music stands. But if you have those small foldable ones, it could be a slight problem or a bit heavy to put it on there. This book is quite old already, so as you can see, I can open it quite easily, so it's actually quite nice. You won't have any fear of it dropping or unfolding over itself. So yeah, 165 pages is quite thick actually for a music book, and we'll be talking a bit more about the content and the number of pages and the chapters and all that later on in the review. So the book was published in 1998, at least I think that's what the copyright says, and it hasn't been updated since. This is the only printing of the book in the sense that it hasn't been republished. So a lot of the materials are still the same as they were in 1998. Just to get you started on the book, the author says, "This book assumes that you have been playing the guitar for at least 2 years, but that you have never given any serious thought to learning how to read music until recently." So I guess what he's trying to say is that he has written this book in mind for the guitar player who has already learned some songs and wants to read music to reach the next level in his playing ability. So if you're a complete beginner, this book might work for you in the first few chapters, but I think later on you'll find that you might have difficulty understanding some of the concepts. The one thing I want to say before you go out and buy this book or any other book that you might come across is that music reading, unfortunately, is one of those skills that you just have to dive into it and start preparing and trying. There is no magical formula where if you read this book finish, or if you watch a DVD on how to sight read, you will learn how to sight read magically or instantaneously. It doesn't work that way. You need to actually work through any book that you get. You need to start using it in your gigs, start reading real life examples, and then you will find that you will pick up note reading on the guitar. It is just one of those skills that you just got to sit down and just go through it to really get better at it. You need to practice it constantly. That's it. Okay, so let's take a look at the book, the structure of the book. This book is broken down into 13 chapters, and starting with the first chapter, he starts with the terms and definitions of music, the bar lines and all that stuff, and he introduces the fifth position, and right up to the 13th chapter where he talks about changing meters and odd meters. Now, in 13 chapters, he covers a lot of ground, which I'm going to talk about in the pros and cons of this book. But I think every chapter is really nicely drawn. The diagrams are big and easy to see. Alright, each chapter is not too long. So what I think distinguishes this book from other reading methods is that the author starts you off by reading in the fifth position. Now, if you're unfamiliar, the fifth position on the guitar is where you put your first finger on the fifth fret and you start playing from the fifth fret. That's what we call fifth position. If you play the open strings, that's called the open position, and it's quite unusual because most books start off with open strings and then start building up the different positions, first position, third position, and then reaching fifth position. But he starts with the fifth position, and I think that's quite unique because, or rather that might be his unique way of getting people to start reading. And it makes sense because most of the time when we learn scales, we learn out the famous A minor pentatonic. And if we look down, we're looking right in the middle of the guitar where the 5th or 7th fret is. And we start playing the minor pentatonic over in that region. So I think what he's trying to do is that by starting with a familiar position, it makes it easier for you to be familiar with reading the notes and staying in that position. So let's talk a bit about the good points about this book. So in the first chapter, point number 1, in the first chapter, I like how the author spends some time talking about simple concepts and breaking it down. I especially like the fact that he did spend some pages talking about how to use eye movement. What I mean by that is, when you sight read or when you learn to read music for guitar, you actually need to be reading ahead. If you are playing bar 1, you should be looking at bar 2 and bar 3 so that you can anticipate the chords. And he talks a little bit about how you can train yourself to look ahead at the next note as you are playing the music. So I thought that's a very unique thing about how he develops that. Another good thing about this book is number 2 is that the first few chapters are at quite a slow pace, but I feel that for any method book, even especially for rhythm reading, music reading I feel that going slow at the beginning really helps with learning how to read the notes better, because once you start with a good enough pace and you're able to grasp the concept that you need, when you need to take it to another level with the other chapters, at least you got it down. Some books really make the mistake of starting very strong in the beginning, and then those who do not know enough of that concept, you find that the book will be a waste of money, which I think most of us want to avoid. So naturally, for a reading book, there are a lot of examples, and in this book is no different. In fact, it's every chapter has a good amount of exercise for you to practice your sight reading, to put the concepts of that chapter into play. Not only at the end of the chapter, but small bits in the middle of the chapter, and at the end of the chapter he gives you like a full-length example, a full page example that you can work with. So I thought that is a very nice touch to the book. The one thing I really like about this book is that they really do cover every topic in terms of music reading for guitar. Everything from learning how to read typical scores like 32 bar scores or odd time meters, how to put that into practice, different rhythms and all that. And there's a great deal of sight reading in this book. So if you're someone who is quite diligent and really can stick with the book all the way through, I believe that if you follow this book chapter by chapter, you will find that your music reading will improve, and there's really no need for you to get supplemental material. Alright, because this is an honest review, let me give you some thoughts about what I think isn't so good about this book. Number 1, there is no audio provided with the book, no CDs. I need to check again, but I'm pretty sure that they have not updated this book, so there's actually no online audio available for it. If you're coming to it completely new, I think there is a need for feedback as well, to know that you're playing the right notes, to know that you're playing in time with the music, and that you can actually play and sight read on the spot. Also, some of the concepts could be further explained with the use of audio. So I feel that this is one big thing that this book is lacking in, and if it had some audio, it would have really upped the ante a little bit in the market for music reading books. Another thing that I don't like about the book is that the author starts giving you a lot of information that I feel is unnecessary, especially in the early chapters. For example, in chapter 2, he talks a lot about music terms, Italian music terms, 32 bar forms, repeat signs and all that. However, I felt that the pace of the book is heavily held back, by these concepts being introduced. He could have introduced these concepts later, maybe at the second half of the book, and really concentrated more on focusing on getting the reader to read music even better, introduce more position shifts, and talk more about reading on a more complete level first before we move on to the concepts, if you know what I mean. The third thing that I feel is that, for example, in the first part of the book, he takes too long He spends about 4 to 5 chapters just on the 5th position before he starts moving on to another position. And even though I mentioned that's a good point, for someone who really wants to get into reading as quickly as possible, that can get old quite fast. So that's just a small thing, but I think he just spends too much time on the 5th position. So in conclusion, I feel that this book is more of a complete method of reading for guitar because it covers all the necessary topics one needs to know about reading music for guitar in general. However, I feel that if that is the purpose of this book, then the amount of information presented in this book falls short. It could have really used with maybe having a few volumes in this series where the concepts could be clearly stretched out and explained, and more in-depth topics could be added to it, like more position reading or learning how to transpose or learning how to read across the fretboard, because this book doesn't really touch on that. However, if the purpose of the book is just to get one to read music on the guitar, start reading music on the guitar, I feel that it does that in the beginning, especially maybe the first 5 chapters. But at some point midway into the book, it starts to get a little bit complicated, and it might deter one from finishing the book, since the jump in difficulty can be a little there can be a bit of a difference between one chapter to the next. This book is quite affordable. If you look on Amazon, it's going for about 20 USD. So it's not too bad. If you were to buy it to try it out, I think it's worth the money for its value. The good thing about this book that it is easy to read, and it really is quite a comprehensive method. It covers a lot of material, and I feel that anyone can pick it up and start learning how to read music. But the book runs the risk of being a book that you can pick up easily, but just as easily put it down and not really finish up this book. I would give this book a 7 out of 10.